And welcome to System.Debug. I am your co-host, Megan Sath, and we also have...
Hey there, everybody. It's Adam Daw, back for the first time in a while.
And we are here today to talk about how to become a Salesforce developer.
Yeah.
So I know everybody is excited to see us. We had a great time a couple of weeks ago with Miranda Ragland talking.
That was just last week, right?
Week before last. Last week was Memorial Day here in the States. Yeah.
Got it.
Short week. We had a Tuesday, Monday last week.
American holidays. I always forget.
Right? Those short weeks drive me nuts too. I feel like everybody tries to cram 5 days into 4 days. So it's like a super busy week. So yeah, no, I can definitely see what it seemed like it was just last week. Yeah. So before we jump into our topic, just a quick rundown about the fact that Salesforce events, most of them have been canceled or postponed indefinitely, but Dreamforce has gone virtual.
Yeah. So
that's
both Dreamforce and TDX are virtual now, is that right?
Absolutely. So we have Trailhead DX happening in July, the 25th. 25th?
No idea.
Now you got me looking it up, man. Trailhead DX. There we go. 2020. June 25th. Yeah.
June 25th. So
June
this
25th.
month.
This month. Yeah.
End of this month. Wow.
Yeah. And it is totally free too, and virtual. So definitely
same with Dreamforce, right? Is Dreamforce free?
I don't know. Is Dreamforce free? I would think so.
I don't know. I'll have to look that up.
Now you got me curious, so let's just check it out. Dreamforce. Update on Dreamforce. God, it just says more to come. Huh. Yeah.
Guess we'll find out.
Oh, they're going to be refunding all purchase passes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like it will be free then.
Yeah. Crazy. So my big question is whether or not Dreamforce is going to stay virtual, after this year, or if it's going to end up being back to in person.
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah. Because that is one thing that is super exciting, is every year going able to go to San Francisco, see everybody, hang out.
Yeah, the community and like the networking is a huge part of the whole experience. So
I totally agree. It's that going to our home, our Salesforce home. We go once a year. We go see our family, our Ohana. We all go hang out. We have those big, parties, all dinners together. There's family dinner. You got to have Shakes and Super Duper Burger, at least one a day. And it's fantastic. I love it. But I don't know. Yeah, for me, events are so much about the people. So, and I think that's one thing that's been really hard about the shelter in place, is just not seeing everybody and not traveling, because I want to go see everyone in person.
This is the longest period of time I've been at home in years, consecutively.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. I do not think I have ever been in my apartment this long. Not in like 7 years. So yeah. But yeah, so Dreamforce and Trailhead DX are going to be at home. So make sure that you check those out. Sign up to catch them virtually. It's going to be exciting. More to come about what is going on, and we'll find out, I guess, what's going to be happening later.
I think there's still a lot of value to these like virtual events. I spoke at a conference last week that was moved to virtual, and we still had like a ton of attendees. They used Crowdcast to stream the event, and it went really well. I think people were still very. It was like in conjunction with a big Slack, so there's a lot of folks chatting and communicating, and there was still a lot of conversations going on.
So I think I have done about 8 user group presentations since the end of April. I've got another one this Saturday, 2 more, one June 21st, one June 24th. I also have Panaya. They'll be presenting tomorrow, June 2nd, for them at 8:30 Pacific. We're going to be redoing our Salesforce Architect best practices with myself and Guillermo. So definitely a bunch of cool stuff to catch.
Yeah.
Again, June 2nd or June 6th. So this Saturday, I'm going to be presenting with my coworker, Kenton, our virtual Dream presentation, plus a little extra because we've got an extra 20 minutes. So expect a virtual Dream plus,
Cool.
which should be pretty cool. It's always hard when you get like a 40-minute session because there's so much you want to tell everyone. So that extra 20 minutes is going to be a lot of fun.
That's great.
And then there is June 24th. I'm going to be presenting for the Wellington, New Zealand user group. And then June 21st, you read my handwriting on my dry erase board. I'm sorry, June 21st, I'm going to be doing another Creative Cloud presentation, and make sure to catch the details in the description below. We'll make sure to put all of our links in there. Do you have any upcoming presentations, Adam?
I don't. Last week was the big one. Apart from that, I don't have anything scheduled.
And that was your JavaScript presentation?
Yep, that was Forward.js. It was a conference. I gave a talk on how to think through application development using finite state machines to kind of help with code coverage and testing and making sure that you don't end up with uncovered scenarios as often.
This sounds very, very complicated.
It sounds like it, but it's not. I promise. Maybe in a future week I can give a version of that kind of conversation, and we can all chat about it.
That sounds fantastic. So speaking of development,
yeah,
our topic today is becoming a Salesforce developer.
Yeah.
Let's get started with a little bit about what Salesforce developers do in their day-to-day lives. Being an architect instead of a dev, let's take this one over to you.
Sure. I think that there's a lot of different definitions of a Salesforce developer, right? There's a lot of different interpretations of the role, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to using the platform in either declarative or programmatic fashion to come up with solutions for the business. The Salesforce platform is something that has a ton of configuration options that you can access declaratively. And often developers should start there, right? Like you can do 80% of any kind of customization that you need using just, declarative development. Code is awesome, but the problem with code is that you're severely limiting who can access or interact or maintain whenever you use it.
Now, one thing that I know that we do on our projects is making sure that we're properly using custom settings and custom metadata types so that changes where possible can be maintained and easily done.
Totally.
Without having to do big code changes.
Yeah, so. I mean, that's very true. I think that ultimately, regardless of whether or not you are using clicks or you're using code to solve a problem, the mentality or the mindset should be the same. And that's really where being like the whole development aspect of it comes down.
Absolutely. And I have seen such a shift in the way that things have been done in the past 12 years. The things have just become far easier to maintain and far more reusable as well.
Yeah.
In terms of development with Salesforce.
I think that I've been thinking about that, and my theory is that the reason for that is, one, you've got more and more people who are becoming Salesforce developers as their first development platform. This is the first language and ecosystem they're learning, as opposed to transitioning from something like Java or .NET development from Oracle or some other CRM system into Salesforce, where they're used to trying to solve their problems through code. And more people are either starting as admins or starting greenfield as Salesforce developers. And so they understand that sometimes the right tool isn't a piece of code. Sometimes the right tool is setting up an easy workflow, or setting up a flow, or setting up a dependent pick list instead. You don't actually need to write a piece of code that's going to do that for you.
No. So tell me a little bit about the differences. So, doing a lot of community work, there have been places that I've worked where we have had front end and back end developers. Tell me a little bit about that in the Salesforce world.
Well, I think that has actually changed quite a bit over the last little while too, because of Lightning Web Components. And the fact that Lightning Web Components are just kind of an implementation of the standard web component specification, which means that you can use the same like HTML, CSS, JavaScript that you'd use everywhere else on the web, you can now use to build front-end components on top of Salesforce too. So in that way, there's kind of a cleaner separation of like front end and back end for Salesforce development, because it used to be with Visualforce that even if you were trying to write like a custom Visualforce page, your controller was Apex and everything was living on the server, regardless of whether or not you were just building a UI or you were building out a trigger or something like that. As opposed to now, where you can write your business logic and everything that should happen in the client and in the UI, you can write that in the UI. And then only the stuff that actually should exist and work on the server happens on the server. Triggers and that kind of like post data entry, post submission validation. Does that make sense?
It does. It totally does. So now we know a little bit about what a Salesforce developer does. So a little bit about how, at least in terms of how Salesforce developers work, where I am on a project. So usually our devs, they do a lot of the project work, and depending on if they are if they are an in-house developer, if they're a junior developer, if they're a senior developer, all depends on whether or not they're the ones that are helping with some of that solutioning, and how detailed they are with that solutioning. One thing I personally love is when developers let me know, because they have a different experience. It's not even just developer, it's pretty much anyone on the project. Every single person in Salesforce comes from a different background.
Sure.
And I've worked on this project, even if they're from the same place where I've worked. They've done other projects. They've worked on this place. That feedback is so good to hear when they can be like, actually, I think it's better if we do it this way. And some of those conversations can be extremely helpful. There have been times when I thought that it would be more difficult to go one route than another, or it would be easier to go this way, and getting that feedback from the dev and finding out actually it's probably better to go that way. So much better. And having them active in that solutioning and that conversation.
For sure. Problem with that is that a lot of that is only going to come with time, right? That kind of experience only happens once you've actually tried it the wrong way, and then you figured out, oh wait, that wasn't the right way to do that thing. So many scenarios, and so much of what makes a good developer is just like a lot of trying to do something the wrong way until you figure out the right way to do it. And yeah, there's a ton of resources out there that can help you, people who are sharing their own experiences, bloggers in the community, or presentations, or even just looking at the documentation saying the way that Salesforce recommends you do it. At the end of the day, none of that is going to take away the, I guess, usefulness of just getting in there and breaking stuff until you figure out how to make it work properly.
But if you are working in consulting, you don't have that many hours to be able to get in there and break everything.
Totally.
So being able, especially, and that goes both ways. So I personally prefer getting that feedback, whether or not we go direction A or direction B. It's being able to have that conversation with your developer, and your developer feeling comfortable enough for them to be able to speak up. And knowing that you can have that dialogue no matter what.
Knowing that it's okay that you don't know the answer sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it is totally fine. And I I raise my hand and say I don't know quite
Mhm.
often,
I
because
mean,
the platform's huge.
yeah, absolutely, and it's getting bigger every day. There's it's practically impossible to know everything about the platform, and if somebody claims to know everything about the platform, I really question that.
Yeah.
um, Even today, like new stuff is coming out. I saw a
Hmm.
cool post about like a new dynamic button setup that came across on Twitter, and it was amazing. I'd never seen it before. And so I started
Yeah.
exploring that. Unfortunately, it's purely declarative right now.
The
Um,
URL hacks.
no, no, ooh, no, bad word.
Oh, there's the new URL hacks, man. Have you not seen those?
I shy away from anything that
Oh,
includes
dude.
hacks.
Oh, dude, it's
Um,
a Salesforce thing. It came out last release.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it's called URL hacks.
No, it's got a different name besides hack, but it's like the old URL hack. But it's a different kind of button.
Okay.
But yeah.
You'll have to send me a link. You'll have to share it. I'm curious
Absolutely.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a post on Salesforce Ben. Again, we'll put it in the description below,
Sure.
about the new functionality as well. Yeah.
Cool.
It's an actual feature.
Mark in the chat, hey Mark, brought up a good point, like that in order to kind of like have that sort of vulnerability, you have to build up a certain level of trust.
Yeah.
You have to trust that, saying that you don't know something isn't going to bite you in, at the end of the project. But I think that ultimately trying to do something when you don't know the right answer and pretend that you do is an easier way to break that trust than the other way around.
Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think by being able to by having that dialogue as an option that's open to your team
Hmm.
is a great way to build that trust.
That's true.
Again, one of those things that goes both ways.
Yeah.
Um,
Although we're getting a little far away from
right?
dev
We
and
are.
more,
Yeah.
but
So jumping a little bit back over.
yeah.
So going into the path of a developer, talking a little bit about certifications. Obviously, one of the big certs to become a developer is Platform Dev 1. To get that, you need to have either your admin or app builder. Now, as a dev, tell me about, so I know I have my Platform Dev 1,
Hmm.
but Platform Dev 1 doesn't mean you can code.
Right.
Tell me about your thoughts on Platform Dev 1 in terms of being a dev.
Well, like I said earlier, I think that just being a dev isn't just about knowing how to code, right? Because if all you know how to do is code on the platform, then you're probably introducing complexity that doesn't need to be there. At the same time, if you don't know how to code, you're missing out on certain tools available on the platform. Uh, Sometimes a pretty complex flow could be solved with a pretty straightforward trigger. Um, so the ability to choose the right tool for the right scenario is a big part of being a developer.
Now, question. So, and that brings up a great point of whether or not. So that choosing tools, though, that is one of the things where we're getting back over into the world of what industry are you in? Consulting? Are you in-house? Or what
I
is your
mean,
role? Because
regardless of
again,
if you're
that type of
in-house,
thing happens based on the tickets you are assigned.
I mean, but a ticket that you're assigned doesn't define what the solution is, right? Tickets
A
should
lot of
never
times
include the
it
solution.
does.
I mean, solutioning isn't the job of people who are defining tickets. Solutioning is the job of the engineer working on the ticket.
Right? It depends on where you work as well.
I mean, some people get it wrong, uh, but that's my opinion, right?
Yeah.
So solutioning is the responsibility of kind of like the architect and engineers working on a project, not the people who are generating the tickets or defining the business case.
So I, as the architect, usually help with tickets. So where I
Okay.
work. So yeah. So therefore, we usually get to the point of having solutions involved. Yeah.
Mm.
And then it's assigning to a dev versus assigning to in-house determines, does it go to code or does it go to declarative?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's certainly true. Knowing both is helpful, especially
Oh,
so
absolutely.
to Nisha's point in the chat, the question was how far do you recommend an admin to know code? I think that for an admin, understanding what code can do and what code should do is probably good enough, right? If you can like step through code and generally understand what it's doing, and especially where it might be breaking down, that's a huge plus, right? That's a huge tool to have as an admin. I also think that a lot of developers, and I mean, I know that earlier in my career, I felt the same way, right? You're like, oh, I'm not an admin and I don't need to know what an admin does. And that's super wrong, right?
Yeah,
Because
I totally agree.
Yeah. It's important to know where the declarative aspects of the platform are interacting with your code. It's important to know what declarative tools are available, not only because of things like code coverage, but also understanding what resources are being leveraged, especially within the context of governor limits on top of the platform.
And, especially as, the coding aspect more and more so touches the declarative aspect too. Now that process builders and flows mean 75% code coverage, I mean, developer that knows process builders and flows, when to use process builders and flows, how do they work, what are the advantages, when should I raise my hand and say this should probably go to, a declarative person instead of me, is also important as well. So a dev that does declarative and understands declarative is extremely important. I agree with you there. But the big question I have is platform dev 2. When does platform dev 2 become important for a developer?
What do you mean?
For a certification, which developers do you recommend having platform dev 2?
I mean, if you have the experience and you've done all of the work you need to do to take the Dev 2, take the Dev 2. There's no harm in that. I know that for consultancies especially, it's important to have certain certifications. And if you're job hunting, having certifications also helps, right? It's a way to represent the experience that you have.
Nice.
Mark has another good comment here about in his workplace, architects and tech leads usually help to shape the ticket and user story. And then that gets broken down into tasks that the dev will then take and figure out how to actually approach. I think that makes a lot of sense, Mark. Thanks for sharing.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we definitely, I know at least in my experience at all of the places that I've worked, we definitely wouldn't assign a dev story to a declarative user, or a declarative stories can go to dev users, but it all depends on which developers on the project. If we have a developer that doesn't know flow, we usually don't assign any of those stories to that developer. Now, there are developers that also like to have their tickets tasked out for them. It depends on knowing your developer and getting to know the devs that you are working with as well.
That's true. I think it's going to change per organization, right?
Yeah. It changes per person, I would say, not even per organization. Yeah.
Another comment here, Mike DeMaria. In Mike's opinion, PD2 matters more if you're doing integration and lots of data. So if you're just, I'm not sure that I super agree with that, because the amount of data doesn't necessarily correlate directly to the complexity of the system. You can have a complex system that only has a few users and only needs to deal with a smaller piece of or amount of data, but it still has a certain level of complexity that requires people to have a better understanding of the more complex code tools available.
Now, one other thing to keep in mind is that platform dev 2 certification is not just the certification. You're not fully certified until you complete the trailhead as well, or the super badge. It is just accreditation until then, correct? Yeah.
Well, I can't speak too much to the whole process.
I'm pretty sure it's just an accreditation until you get the super badge. And then there is also, there's another part to it too. We will have to add that to the description as well. But to stay on task, talking about getting started with coding. So, of course, we all know that Salesforce is declarative first. We have been talking about that throughout this whole episode. But one thing about how to get started and where to start learning. So one resource that I know that is coming in handy for a number of users, and developers that I know that like to do the read along side is the Women Code Heroes blog. And I can definitely share that link in the description below.
Awesome.
In addition, Rad Women Who Code and the course there. One of the big things that people always talk about is that, getting that hands-on and knowing, what do I need to learn? What are those base items, and where do I get that foundation, and figuring out that direction. Personally, I'm a hands-on learner. That's how I learned Salesforce, because 12 years ago they didn't have anything to learn.
Yeah,
there was
same.
that one blog post in that one place at one time that you can usually find because it was the only thing that came up on Google.
I think that I'm in a similar vein, right? Like when I got exposed to the platform, none of this stuff really existed. And the best way to learn is just to kind of try it and break things and do research and read up and try to solve your problems and figure it out. Obviously, that's something you can't do in a live project, and it normally means taking stuff home and doing a lot of homework. But for at least for me and for a lot of other people, that's the best way to learn.
I would say, however, that was great for me when it came to things on the platform overall. But when it came to code, that was entirely different. Code was not something that I could just learn, because there was no way to learn the bits and pieces of Apex. And there is no way to get a program together. And there was nowhere to set up what is it that you need to learn. Now, there's the idea of learning Java to learn Apex to get an idea of it, but that's also not the way to go.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
JavaScript to learn LWC.
Yeah.
But Apex not.
Even learning JavaScript is only going to help you with syntax. It's not going to help you figure out how to solve a problem.
But
I think
syntax is a big part of what people are looking for.
Well, syntax you can look up in the documentation. I think Ryan in the chat, good to see you, has it right. Just pick a problem and try to solve it. And that's going to take time, and you're going to have to do a lot of reading, but that's probably going to be the best way.
So I know that one thing that I would recommend that is out there is for women and people that are non-binary, is that there is the option of taking the Rad Women Who Code program, where there is the opportunity to be part of the orientation in the class webinar, and then from there, after you attend that, as long as you make it to that after you sign up, there's a group of people who are drawn from that. They get the opportunity to be part of the class. Now, mind you, that class is jam-packed.
Yeah, and it's a great course. I've been a coach for Rad Women in the past. It's an awesome program. They've got fantastic instructors, and it's a brilliant group of people who are eager to learn and are getting into it and getting their hands dirty, and that's awesome. There is a big community out there outside of Rad that is also, the Salesforce community is known for being pretty tight knit, and even if you're not in one of those programs, people are around. If you've got questions, you can post them up, and people will be there.
Yeah, I recommend, if you can find a mentor or someone to work on a program with you.
Sure.
I know that one of my good friends, Patrick, is currently working with another good friend, Steve, as his mentor. And he's getting, one-on-one weekly trainings.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that for a couple of months now. And he's gone from being a declarative developer to now being able to wrote his first batch class a few weeks ago. He's been writing test classes now in his free time.
That's awesome.
And he's just gone from, no code to being able to write Apex, starting out on Lightning Web Components. It's just done some amazing work.
Yeah, if you have the opportunity to find like a mentor or something like that, that's a great resource. Couldn't agree more.
And I highly recommend, if you are going to be, it's probably going to be easier for you and better structured if you can. I know Salesforce has the Trailhead Mentoring Program. And again, that, for those of you who haven't signed up for it, that is 3 sessions over 1 month that is required with your mentor. So just keep that in mind.
Mark also mentioned here that there's David Liu's Apex Academy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then
yeah.
there is the SFDC 99 as
Oh,
well.
yeah,
that
yeah,
can
yeah.
walk you through.
I think that there's also like there's a ton of great stuff on Pluralsight, right? And for the utility it has, at least kind of trying to walk you through. There's also a lot of modules and stuff available on Trailhead.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, all the documentation is online, so you can also read that.
Yeah, and I know we're at the top of the hour. We'll definitely have to continue this and get some more resources together and finish up our episode so that we can finish reviewing those and what some of those other options are for classes and for some more hands-on learning for you.
Sure.
But thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you everybody in the chat for making it here today. So exciting to see 7 people watching right now. Hi everybody. But yeah. Thank you all for coming this week. Make sure that you follow us on Twitter at system.debug. I'm at Megan SF, and then there is also Adam. What is your Twitter?
I'm at Adam Daw.
And then don't forget to follow our other co-host, which is Nate. And his is S-Force Be With You. And then there's also the infamous RJ. Thank you all so much. And you have a lovely rest of your day.